Let me also ask then about India and Russia, because that's the other interesting thing, right? India, in a sense, was forced to take a stance to say like, no, we stand I mean, we do not stop our import of Russian oil. Um, Maybe just on the one hand, it's an insult to ask that in the first place, but on the other hand, Russian oil at the moment is just too important. And then we also see the development with the new Power of Siberia 2 pipeline. And there's some talk. I mean, some people speculate that in the distant future, this could reach all the way down to India and help supply India with Russian oil. Do you see such a move as well going on, and how do you interpret India's stance on the oil?
Well, look, internationally, the India-Russia relations are the most solid, historical, no conflict of interest, complete support from both sides. And there's a complete consensus in these countries. Now, in India, which is very divided, there's a right, there's a left, there's a center, there's the ordinary people, but you ask anyone on the political spectrum and they say Russia is a partner. There's no dispute on that. And it has to continue. So they can talk of India, Pakistan, India, China, but on India, Russia, there is this consensus. Second, it's, yes, oil is very important. And even in today's newspaper, the Indian Oil Corporation said, the flow is going on as well. But I also saw a statement which said that India has reduced Russian oil by a small percentage and increased buying American oil by 124%, which means that they are trying to make concessions to the US also. India can absorb both the Russian and the US oil. And mind you, it was Janet Yellen who told India that, yes, continue buying Russian oil because it stabilizes oil prices. So India does not only buy Russian oil, India has huge investments in Siberian oil fields. Huge. Siberia 1, Siberia 2, the ONGC, the Oil and Natural Gas Commission of India, they have people permanently there. And then they're buying it in their local currency. So the Reserve Bank of India has given Russia and they have the system called Vostro, where these banks, the foreign banks, get a license to trade in their own currency. And every week, one other bank in the world is getting that license. So, and Russia, of course, was the first, because during the Indo-Soviet period, there was, the rupee-ruble trade, which saved India's foreign exchange. And India saves billions on account of it. And the Reserve Bank of India's chairperson has said this. He said, it would be devastating. Why should we stop our growth? Because what is America ultimately giving? Yes, we are trading with them, but today it said it's a kind of, if they block and put these tariffs, it'll be like less than, 2% of their trade. Doesn't matter. It will get impacted. So they can take the hit. The other thing with Russia is that for years, they were the main defense exporters. I think you mentioned history and that people forget. There was a long period of India-American antagonism. It started in the 50s when India refused to join the SEATO, the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, the CENTO, the Central Treaty Organization, which Pakistan did. They used Pakistan as the base. They tried to hyphenate Pakistan and India, which they've done again. Trump has done it after 25 years. And then India supported the Bangladesh struggle in 1971. The US sent its 7th Fleet into the Indian Ocean as a threat, but India didn't bother, and Pakistan got split into two, something for which they've never forgiven India. So there's been a history of bad relations with China, which started improving only in the late 1990s. So these, what everyone says, last 25, 30 years at most. And now these can go into some, they can be calibrated. India will hedge, they will leverage, but they don't want to ruin their relations. That's what strategic autonomy is. And some Indian commentators say that, India is dependent on Russian sanctioned oil. They're dependent on US technology, which Navarro said we're not wanting to send any technology to India, but on Indian exports to the US. And they're going to be dependent on Chinese FDI, which hasn't come in that way, but there is trade and there is talk. So this whole process is going on at various levels.
So are we actually witnessing, the end of the United States structural power in India, but in the global South in general? Because I think 20 years ago, 25 years ago, had the United States said tariffs and sanctions and so on, only the most diehard of countries wouldn't have followed. I mean, one of them was North Korea, the other one was then Iran, but others would have had to comply in a sense. And we are already at a place where the options to say like, okay, fine, then not is now here, isn't it?
Absolutely correct. Because 25 years ago, when the Soviet Union collapsed and they were seriously in a bad place, but India did not stop importing Russian defense equipment. In fact, Moscow and Petrograd, the two cities depended on these imports for several years. So they were very grateful to India. The balance had shifted. And India started negotiating with the US and wanting more trade. The Indian strategic elite overall is very pro-US. Their children study there. You see everyone. They're dependent on the H-1B visas. But currently, there's a rise of racism also, a decline in the number of visas being given. So overall. But at the moment, this is precisely what you said. They have the options. They have the options which are opening every day of telling the US, if you don't take our exports, we would, like Brazil has done, they've sent their coffee to China. So China hasn't opened up in the same way to India as yet, but they're watching. And India can do it to South Asia, Southeast Asia. And but of course, it's not easy to change the supply chains, the value chains, the logistics. But India has learned a lesson that they have to diversify. They cannot blindly trust the US, which they had started doing because they really wanted to shift. They never wanted to become a junior partner because the US doesn't have partners, they have client states.